Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most widely accepted yet completely misunderstood pieces of personal finance advice out there. You know the old adage, right? If you want to get your spending under control, you've got to grab the scissors and chop up that plastic. But when we actually look at the hard data and the mechanics behind this idea, well, it turns out this incredibly satisfying act of destruction might literally be sabotaging your financial future.
So here is the big question we're confronting today. Is destroying your credit card actually a terrible idea? I mean, think about that moment for a second. We've all seen it. The record scratches, the dramatic music swells, and someone triumphantly snips their credit card right in half, declaring their total financial independence. And honestly, it feels incredibly empowering. It feels like you're taking this immediate, decisive action against your debt. But there is a massive difference between what feels good in the moment and what actually works for your financial health in the long run. Moving to Section 1, the ultimate financial myth. This is really about that cinematic trope versus the cold, hard reality. On the one hand, we've got this perceived benefit, right? No more spending. The logic seems absolutely flawless. If you don't have the physical card, you literally can't swipe it at the store, and therefore, boom, you stop accumulating debt. It acts as this immediate physical barrier to your impulses. But the actual reality? It's pretty much universally considered terrible financial advice by credit experts. It's really just a Band-Aid solution. It completely ignores and actually harms the underlying mechanics of your credit profile. Because by focusing entirely on the physical piece of plastic, people frequently move to close the account entirely. And as you'll see, that backfires spectacularly. Section 2, the anatomy of the fallacy. Let's look at what actually happens when the scissors come out. Now, what's really interesting here is how we can define the core issue. The fallacy of destroying credit cards is essentially this misguided, conventional wisdom that physically cutting up a card is a responsible way to manage debt, when in reality, it's mathematically terrible financial advice. I want you to notice the emphasis on the word mathematically here. Because yes, personal finance is largely behavioral. We know that. But your credit score? That is a strict, emotionless mathematical algorithm. When you destroy a card and close that account, you aren't just making a bold behavioral statement. You are actually changing the variables in the equation that determines your creditworthiness. You're trading a temporary behavioral fix for long-term mathematical damage. Which brings us to Section 3, why your score drops. Let's break down the implied mechanics of that credit damage. Okay, let's talk about your credit utilization ratio. This is one of the most heavily weighted factors in your credit score. It's simply your used credit divided by your total available credit. So let's play this out. Imagine you have two credit cards, each with a $5,000 limit. That makes your total available credit $10,000. Let's say you owe $5,000 on one card and $0 on the other. Your utilization is exactly 50%. Not too bad, right? Now, following the myth, you cut up and close the card with a $0 balance, just so you aren't tempted to use it. Instantly, your available credit shrinks down to just $5,000. But here's the kicker, your debt hasn't changed at all. Without spending a single extra dime, your utilization just spiked to a maxed out 100%. And your credit score? It is going to plummet as a direct result. So the absolutely crucial point here is that the damage doesn't even stop at your utilization ratio. Destroying a card and closing the account also leads to a lowered average account age. Look, your credit score loves a long, stable history because it proves to lenders that you're reliable over a long period of time. By closing an account, especially an older one that you might target simply because you finally paid it off, you're artificially shortening your credit history. Over time, as that closed account eventually falls off your report, your average age of accounts decreases. This effectively wipes out years of good behavior that you worked really hard to establish. It's quite literally like erasing straight A's from your high school transcript just because you graduated. It just doesn't make sense. So let's pivot to Section 4, a better financial path. Let's look at some smarter alternatives to those scissors. And this brilliantly illustrates the actual blueprint for financial recovery, laid out in 3 essential steps. Step 1, keep the account open. Even if you want to completely stop using the card, you need to preserve your available credit and that long account history. Honestly, if you really feel like you lack the self-control, put the physical card in a block of ice in your freezer or lock it in a safe. Just do not cancel the account itself. Step 2, build better spending habits. Look, the scissors aren't going to teach you how to budget. They're just removing a symptom. True financial health means addressing the root cause of the spending. We're talking budgeting apps, cash envelopes, expense tracking, whatever works for you. And finally, step 3, pay down balance balances systematically. Without the distraction of these sudden credit score drops from closed accounts, you can focus all your energy on methods like the debt snowball or the debt avalanche to clear what you owe. Ultimately, it's discipline, not destruction, that actually builds wealth.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. Once we realize that something as universally praised as cutting up a credit card is actually pretty terrible advice, well, it forces us to ask a bigger question. What other common sense financial advice are you blindly following? We inherit so many of these rules of thumb from our parents, from movies, and from random internet forums, usually without ever checking the actual math behind them. So I want to challenge you to look at your own financial habits today. Are you making decisions based on what feels dramatic and satisfying? Or are you making decisions based on how the system actually works? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember, always keep questioning the conventional wisdom. Catch you next time.